The anime opens with an elderly couple tending to their apple orchard. Setu apologizes to his wife, Setu, for not being able to afford the honeymoon they wanted long ago. However, Ain reassures him, expressing contentment with their life together. They reminisce about a special apple tree they planted 60 years ago, which was damaged by a typhoon. As they inspect the tree, they notice a golden apple, sparking their surprise. Returning home, Shuzu reflects on his past regrets, feeling guilty for not providing Ain with a better life. He acknowledges her loyalty despite his shortcomings. Overwhelmed with emotion, he cries in the bathroom, only to discover that he has mysteriously regained his youth upon looking in the mirror. Rushing to Ain, he finds that she too has become young again, much to their astonishment. The elderly man becomes excited about the prospect of having a honeymoon with his wife. The following day, their granddaughter Mino visits and is taken aback by their youthful appearance. Despite the initial surprise, she is captivated by her handsome grandfather. When Mino's father, Yoshiaki, takes her home, she excitedly shares the news of her grandparents' rejuvenation, but Yoshiaki dismisses it as a joke. Meanwhile, neighbors in the park reminisce about missing the Setu couple, who used to visit frequently but had slowed down due to age and health. With their newfound youth, Shuzu becomes popular with elderly ladies, while Ain catches the attention of elderly men. In the past, Yoshiaki had urged his parents to move in with him due to their aging, but Shuzu insisted on staying on their ancestral land. As Yoshiaki continued to persuade his father, Ain worked alongside her daughter-in-law Kide in the kitchen. Kide asked Ain about her desires, to which Ain replied that as long as she could be with her husband, she was content with anything. In the present, Kate visits her in-laws to deliver some ingredients requested by Ain. To her surprise, she finds Shuzu looking remarkably young. Shuzu explains that Ain is at a community center meeting, assuming Kate already knew about their rejuvenation from their granddaughter. Seeing Kate's astonishment, Shuzu apologizes for not realizing her shock earlier. Completely taken aback, Kate excuses herself to the bathroom to process what she has just witnessed, realizing she now has a handsome father-in-law. Later, Kate calls her husband, who arrives with Mino. Yashiyuki is shocked to see his parents looking youthful, confirming Mino's earlier claims. He questions Kate for not informing him immediately, but she explains that she wanted to tell him in person. In the midst of the reunion, Mino clings to her grandfather, prompting Kai to scold her. Shuzu reassures Ain that he only has eyes for her, comforting his wife, while Yoshiaki is left speechless. However, Ain is displeased to see Mino so close to her husband and reprimands him with a slap across the face. After bidding farewell, Yoshiaki, his wife, and daughter head home as he needs to attend work. Ain expresses concern about her son overworking, and affectionately pets him, evoking memories of when he was a child, and she praised his hard work in a similar manner. Feeling left out, Mino also desires some affection, and Ong happily grants her granddaughter's wish. Later, the elderly residents of the neighborhood worry about the upcoming annual sports festival. With the closure of the school in Manamamachi due to another school opening in Kinamachi, there are no children left in the area, causing the population to age, making it challenging for them to compete and win the festival. Adding to their worries is the fear of someone having a heart attack during the event, resulting in Kinamachi's victory every year. Feeling disheartened and considering giving up, the elderly residents of Minamamachi find renewed hope when they see Shuzu and his newfound strength, viewing him as a beacon of hope and even bowing to him. They implore Shuzu to participate in the festival with them, adamantly refusing to accept any refusal. Shuzu expresses frustration, feeling deceived as he thought he was attending a community center meeting. On the day of the sports festival, Heisuke Igarashi, the head of the neighborhood council of Kitamachi, arrives to mock his opponents from Minamachi. He teases them, claiming he heard they might not participate because all their participants are over 50 years old. To further emphasize his point, he showcases his young grandsons, including Shouta Igarashi, the star of the school's soccer team, and Daiki Igarashi, the captain of the school's baseball team. They all laugh at the idea of competing against elderly individuals, displaying confidence in their inevitable victory. However, Sano, the leader of the Manamamaki Neighborhood Association, counters by suggesting that they have a secret weapon prepared for this year's festival. Heisuke dismisses this as a joke until Shuzu and his companions suddenly appear completely rejuvenated, leaving Heisuke and his grandson speechless. Heisuke even speculates that they might be Seiju's grandchildren, but Shuzu clarifies that they themselves have become young again. With this surprising revelation, the festival commences with a tug of war. Both teams exert maximum effort, but when Ain is persuaded to become Minamachi's cheerleader, their morale soars, leading them to their first victory. Ain feels a bit bashful about being a cheerleader at her age, but she's intrigued to see her husband enjoying such activities. As the relay race progresses to the three-legged race, where pairs run with their feet tied together, Shouta and Deki strive to compensate for their earlier loss in the tug-of-war. Heizuk is hopeful for victory, counting on the brothers' long history of practicing sports together, giving them an advantage in understanding each other's movements. However, just as Shouta and Deki approach the finish line, Ain and Shuzu effortlessly overtake them, seemingly gliding through the race without any visible struggle. Despite their feet being tied, the Seidu couple's coordination is impeccable, a testament to their nearly 70 years of being together. Shuzu adjusts his pace to match Ain's rhythm perfectly, allowing them to cross the finish line first. With this victory, the Seidu couple adds another win to minimum matches tally, leaving Heizuk and his grandsons feeling frustrated and defeated. Shouta and Deki realize that competing isn't as simple as they initially thought, while Heizuk seethes with anger over the fact that Shuzu not only took Ain away from him in the past but also managed to steal his grandchildren's joy now. Ain appears to apologize for getting too caught up in the games, attempting to console the two. Heizuk questions why Ain isn't with her husband, and Ain explains that Shuzu has become quite popular after winning the relay, and is currently surrounded by admirers. To lighten the mood, Ain brings out a meal to share with everyone, extending the offer to Heizuk and his grandsons. They all eat together, reminiscing about the passing of Heizuk's wife 3 years prior. During the meal, Ain remarks that Shouta and Deki bear a striking resemblance to their grandfather when he was younger, triggering memories of Heizuk's romantic feelings for Ain in the past. This revelation surprises the grandsons, who realize that their grandfather's interest in Ain caused the rift with Shuzu, and encourages the boys not to dwell on their loss and to strive for a comeback in the multi-sport relay the following year, earning their admiration while leaving Heizuk fuming. A week after the relay, Heizuk sends Shouta to deliver something to the Sato couple's house to thank Ain for her help that day. When the boy arrives, Mino greets him at the door and thanks him for the delivery, inviting him inside. Shouta agrees to enter but feels nervous being alone with Mino, especially since his family is out shopping. Although they're in the same class, Mino is popular and Shouta struggles socially, making him feel awkward and unsure of how to act. To ease the tension, Shouta starts playing with his phone, but Mino becomes curious and approaches him, increasing his anxiety. Kate arrives with her in-laws and stands at the door, unsure of what to do. Inside, they learn the reason for Shota's visit. Shuzu is friendly to the boy, but Ain and Kiai's presence makes Shouta feel like he's being judged. Trying to make conversation, Shuzu asks if they're in the same class, and Mino praises Shota's intelligence and athleticism, leading Kate to whisper approvingly to Ain about him. Seeing them whispering, Shuzu attempts to intervene by asking Shouta if he likes any girl, but Ain stops him from prying. After saying goodbye, Mino invites Shouta to come back anytime. Kate and Ain find it amusing how formally they bid farewell, realizing they weren't even close friends. As Shouta leaves, Mino regrets not having more time alone with him, quietly wishing she could have talked to him longer. Shuzu overhears his granddaughter's comment but decides to keep it a secret. Meanwhile, Shouta asks his grandfather to send him to do something at the Sato's house, giving him an excuse to go back there again. The next day, Mino talks to her grandparents and learns that Ain confessed her feelings to Shuzu first. He explains that, although he was happy to hear it because he had always been interested in Ain, he had to turn her down because, at that time, marrying for love was difficult. Mino's great-grandfather was conservative and wanted to arrange a marriage for Shuzu. Mino finds it terrible that Shuzu couldn't choose his own spouse, and Ain explains that family influence was significant back then. She asks what her grandfather did, and he reveals that he considered running away with Ain, but they resolved the issue differently. Ain intervened before Shuzu's arranged marriage and told the girl she wouldn't allow her to marry him. Shuzu praises Ain for her courage, and Mino feels proud of her grandmother. Ain suggests that the girl already had feelings for someone else and only agreed to the arranged marriage reluctantly. Then Miyuno pleads with her grandmother to act as if she were the girl, and reenact what she said back then. Ain feels a bit embarrassed but notices her husband looking at her expectantly. She decides to make this effort for him and her granddaughter, who are both filled with pride as they witness the enactment. In an apple orchard, two young boys express their belief that farming is a job for older people, and that young folks like them should move to the city, maybe even Tokyo, to make money. One of the boys is confident he can quickly find a girlfriend in a big city. Suddenly, they notice a beautiful young woman instead of the elderly couple who usually tend to the orchard. The girl greets them politely, causing the boys to run away in embarrassment. Further away, they assume she's the daughter or granddaughter of the elderly couple until her husband arrives, and she affectionately calls him dear old man, leaving the boys even more perplexed. As the man arrives with his truck full of apples, he advises the boys to be careful on their way home and drives off with the beautiful woman as if nothing unusual happened. This encounter changes the boys' perspective, and they decide they want to become farmers when they grow up. In a flashback to when the couple were still elderly, Ain asks to discard some flyers, but changes her mind when she sees a dress on sale for 5,000 yen. She decides to keep the flyer to plan dinner later. The next day, young Nine asks young Shuzu if he went anywhere today. To be continued, the man replies that he just took a light walk, so his wife is confused to see a package on the ground. Upon opening it, she sees it's the dress she wanted so much and assumes her husband bought it. She reciprocates with affection, but Shuzu realizes he's been caught. Later, they silently prepare dinner together, then watch a romantic movie at Mino's request. In the movie, Shuzu notices that today's youth are watching some extreme stuff, in his opinion. For him, even if there's no more kissing between him and his wife, it's much more important that they understand each other so well. Ain doesn't seem to agree so much with her husband as she's paying attention to the kissing scene. When Shuzu draws her attention to this, Ain sees no other option but to ask him for something. Soon, Shuzu accepts his beloved's request, and the two reenact the kiss they just saw in the movie. Despite their efforts, Ain can't feel the expected effect after all. They've been together for 50 years, and they're no longer teenage lovers. With that, the man already assumes the stance of "I told you so," because according to him, that's something for young people. Ain agrees on the surface, but inside, she's sweating. In the late afternoon, an old friend of the couple arrives at their house and asks Mino if they're home because she brought mountain asparagus and other gifts. As the lady had an extremely strong accent, the young woman couldn't understand a word of what she was saying. To save the situation, Ain appears celebrating the arrival of Mrs. Kakia from the fish market. Kakia doesn't understand what's going on, so she asks her friend why all the fuss. Ain replies that she just got a little younger, so the lady assesses Mino to notice that she's really the same age as her dear grandson. And 1-3, so she offers him to the girl. Then Ain hugs the girl and says she won't let her marry yet, but Mino would love it if it were with her grandfather. Later, the daughter of the couple's second son, Takahiro, fought with her father and ran away to her grandmother's house. Even though she's happy to have somewhere to spend the night, young Sayori doesn't understand how the old lady got so young like this. Ain offers something for the girl to eat, but she's sulking and refuses because the bullying she's been facing has impacted her psyche a lot. Shiori is the classic school nerd, and besides being teased for it, at home her father acts as if she has to meet his expectations, forcing the girl to study medicine. Therefore, the girl thinks she's lost everything tonight: her desire to study, her future prospects, and her own father. However, Ain argues that just the fact that the girl is crying is proof that she cares and keeps fighting. When she was a child, Shiori said she wanted to be a doctor to cure all the diseases in the world. And even though she's changed her mind today, Shiori has never stopped being a beloved granddaughter. Hearing this, the girl bursts into tears and enjoys her grandmother's hug, besides asking to have dinner with her. In another flashback from the past, Ain apologizes to her husband for not being able to travel on vacation because she got sick, but the man is understanding and puts his wife's health first. Ain encourages him to take little Yoshiaki for a walk on the beach, but Shuzu thinks it's not the same without his wife by his side. Ain jokes that the guy is eager to see her in a bikini, so he teases that he also wants to make other guys at the beach jealous. Back to the present, Ain thinks that young people are really showing off their bodies too much everywhere lately. While she wonders what kind of bikini would make Shuzu happy to see her wearing. She knows he's a pervert, but maybe walking around in a short bikini is too much for her. Therefore, she decides to wear the white dress she received the other day. Peeking into her grandmother's dilemma, Shiori advises her to be more daring and show off that beautiful body God gave her for the world to see. Ain reminds the girl that she's old inside, but Shiori doesn't see anything wrong with her grandmother showing off a bit for her husband. Finally, Ain decides to think about it while making dinner, so Shiori tells her grandfather that the woman left and says he's hopeless because everything was a plan to convince Ain to wear a short bikini. The following day, the man who attempted to scam Ain got caught by the police. While watching the news on TV, Shuzu warns his wife to be cautious, knowing that scammers often target people after 6 p.m. when the phone lines are less monitored. Later, Ain realizes that her eyesight has improved so much that she no longer needs her glasses. She can even see things that the young Mino can't. With a mischievous motive, Mino asks her grandmother if she can read the newspaper without her glasses. When Ain successfully reads the article, Shuzu joins them. Mino then challenges her grandmother to read specific words from the newspaper, and Ain effortlessly completes the sentence, "Darling, you are charming." Mino teases her grandparents, suggesting that Ain is shamelessly flirting with Shuzu. They playfully continue the game, prompting Mino to finish the sentence, "I like someone." And that person is. However, Mino tries to avoid embarrassment and ends the game abruptly. Later, while watching a romantic movie, Mino asks Ain if she and Shuzu ever held hands. Ain explains that holding hands at their age is more about supporting each other than expressing romantic affection. Hearing this, Mino remarks on the lack of romance between her grandparents. Upon returning from shopping in the neighborhood, the couple feels content about buying Chinese cabbage. As the cold weather sets in, Shuzhu notices that Ain isn't wearing a glove on her right hand. Deep down, she hopes her husband will notice and offer his hand to warm hers. However, Shuzhu hesitates, fearing that holding hands would be giving in to their granddaughter's whims. Despite Ain dropping hints about feeling cold, Shuzhu remains oblivious until he suddenly looks at his hand. With her heart racing, Ain gathers the courage to reach out and hold her husband's hand. Later, they share their rejuvenation story with their second son, Takahiro. Although Takahiro is puzzled by their youthful appearance, he's glad to see his parents feeling great and full of life. Upon examining his mother, Takahiro notices that her breathing has become steadier, and her pulse has slowed down. Convinced that his parents have indeed become younger, Takahiro promises to provide updates once they have more information. However, a medical examination reveals that Ain has liver cancer. Since she recently recovered from gastroenteritis, the doctors recommend further tests, including blood tests and a tomography scan. Treatment will be determined based on the results of these tests. Upon hearing the news, Takahiro recalls his vow to become a doctor to save his mother. However, he realizes that all he could do was connect her with a skilled physician. As he witnesses his mother's declining health each day, Takahiro feels helpless. Despite not directly intervening, he finds solace in the thought that his efforts have brought some form of reward, prompting tears as he remembers his promise to his mother. Reflecting on the past, Shuzhu and Ain's bond with their farm and lifestyle deepened as their children grew. Everything seemed promising until a sudden typhoon shattered their apple tree in half. Despite their efforts to save it, the tree struggled to survive. Through years of dedication and hard work, they witnessed the miraculous appearance of a golden apple on its withered branches. As Shuzhu cuts the apple, he considers placing it on their Shinto altar, but Ain believes it would be a waste. Its allure is too tempting to resist, almost beckoning to be eaten. Ultimately, they decide to share the fruit. Meanwhile, the apple tree, grateful for the carrot received, vanishes in a mystical manner. After consuming the apple, Ain awakens in an entirely unfamiliar setting, facing a massive, solid glass structure. Suspended in the air, the glass rotates, resetting its countdown before crashing onto Ain. It becomes evident that Ain was recounting a dream about the Harjlas, with Shuzhu revealing he had the same dream. Perplexed by the coincidence, Ain realizes that it's their 58th wedding anniversary. She suggests celebrating with something special, like a cake, but Shuzhu dismisses the idea, claiming cake is for children. However, Ain sees through his facade, knowing he enjoys surprises. As she checks the refrigerator for red rice she prepared for the evening, Ain discovers a piece of cake placed beside it. She playfully throws it at Shuzhu, exposing his bluff. In return, Shuzhu unveils the rice prepared by Ain. Ain jokingly questions if Shuzhu deceives their granddaughter too, to which he replies that he reserves such playful deceit only for Ain, his beloved. Amidst the laughter and surprises, the couple celebrates their anniversary, cherishing the tradition of sharing joyful moments together. After the meal, Shira reminisces about her past. After graduating from middle school, she began working on a farm, leaving little time for study. For a brief period, she attended a women-only school in Tokyo, which felt like a dream. She enjoyed luxuries like eating white rice whenever she wanted and experiencing the refreshing flow of water from the faucet, reminiscent of a waterfall. However, the outbreak of war changed everything. The school she attended was destroyed, plunging Shira into a life of suffering and loneliness in the swampy fields. It was during this difficult time that she met the love of her life, and suddenly, the hardships seemed more bearable. Shuzhu recalls Tokyo as a bustling capital where one could find anything they desired. However, Ain emphasizes the unique charm of countryside life, highlighting aspects that city living cannot replicate. Despite Ain's insistence on keeping a secret, Shuzhu's curiosity is piqued. Later, Shori arrives with a video game, believing it would be a good gift for her grandparents to prevent dementia. However, Shuzhu believes that traditional games like Menko, Tag, or Spinning Tops would be more suitable for children. As they reminisce about starting a game called Danger in the Rice Field 3, Shuzhu is afraid of the undead. Wallam repeatedly chants the phrase Namu Amida Butsu, seeking refuge in Amida Buddha. In the game, an old man continuously warns that trouble is looming, leading Shuzhu to believe the character may be suffering from dementia. When they discover a healing herb and worries about the consequences of taking it from someone else's home, fearing punishment from the Buddhas, the grandfather doubts the effectiveness of healing through eating a sour cassava root. Reflecting on the plight of the undead, the couple agrees that the zombies didn't choose their fate and must be put out of their misery by shooting them in the head. After eliminating the enemies one by one, a zombie drops a chainsaw, Since the husband already has a shotgun, the wife takes the chainsaw. Nearby, zombies are wreaking havoc in the rice field, prompting the farmers to show no mercy. Together, they dispatch every undead creature until the rice field is free from their menace. The following day, they have completed all achievements in the game, so they decide to stop playing because there is nothing left to do. Later, Mino returns home and reunites with Shiori after a long time. With a playful smile, Shiori embraces her cousin, who tries to gently push her away. Although they attend the same school, they rarely see each other because their classes are in different buildings. In their childhood, they were close friends and often played together, but as Shiori points out, those days are now in the past. For Mino, what remains significant is Shiori's deep affection for their grandparents. Shiori's bond with them is so strong that she continues to stay at their house. Mino affectionately calls her act tough, but she's still a sweetheart inside. However, Shiori corrects Mino, expressing that her feelings toward her grandparents are more nuanced than just mere liking. Unfortunately, their conversation is overheard by Shizu, who misinterprets Shiori's words and feels hurt, believing his granddaughter dislikes him. Despite Shiori's initial stubbornness, she eventually relents and explains to her grandfather that her words were not meant to hurt him. While she doesn't explicitly express her love for him, she asks him not to hate her, which touches Shizu's heart. He softens, grateful for Shiori's presence and the love she shows in her own way. Sometime later, Shizu once again finds himself in the recurring dream where he's facing a hard glass, just like his wife. Shizu reflects on how, since they regained their youth, they've been cherishing their time together. Despite this, there are still many experiences they haven't had, like their honeymoon in Yoshiaki. With their bodies rejuvenated, they can now pursue dreams that were once lost to old age, and they savor each moment as if time could reverse at any instant. However, on this particular day, that's exactly what happens. Upon waking up, Shizu rouses his wife and shows her that he has suddenly lost his youth. He reassures her that he still doesn't feel the joint pains as before, but he worries that she may prefer his younger self. In response, she clarifies that it wasn't his youth or age that made her fall in love, but rather his essence as a person, the one and only in her eyes. Listening to his wife's words with affection, Shizu realizes she's right. Viewing old age as something negative is disrespectful to all the shared history they've experienced together because until recently, it was their reality. However, their age never hindered their love and commitment to each other. Even after regaining his youth, Shizu found himself forgetting his true self, despite appearing old. Therefore, despite still having his elderly body, Shizu is determined to fulfill the honeymoon they once promised. He feels too young at heart to give up on life's adventures. Meanwhile, at the Saiku clinic, Takahiro is puzzled by his parents' situation. Despite looking old, Shizu still possesses the physical strength of a young man. However, his internal organs, like his liver and kidneys, haven't fared as well, warning against overexertion. In a private conversation with his mother, Takahiro shares his concern about Ime's health. Despite appearing youthful, she now has the body of a healthy 20-year-old. If she ages slowly from this point, it raises worries about her long-term health in the years ahead of her. Although Ime isn't afraid of death, she worries about outliving her husband, who may pass away first, considering that if she lives another 70 years, their children and grandchildren might no longer be alive. Aine is deeply troubled by the prospect of dying alone. Later, Shuzer gathers the family to reveal that they have aged once again. Despite this, Ime still has concerns about her father's arm, which is showing signs of deterioration. To prove his strength, he engages in an arm wrestling match with his son, Yoshiaki. Although Yoshiaki urges caution, his father is confident, especially after his son offers to treat him to a room with an outdoor bath if he wins. In a moment of distraction, Shuzu daydreams about relaxing in a hot tub with his wife, causing his veins to stiffen with excitement. With Mino acting as judge, the match begins and ends quickly with Mr. Shuzu Secto claiming victory, much to the delight of his wife, Aine. Later, while shopping, Shuzu feels self-conscious about their appearance as an older couple, leading him to distance himself from Aine out of shame. He even suggests pretending they're not married when they go out together. However, when a clerk assumes Shuzu is shopping for his granddaughter, Aine proudly corrects the misunderstanding, reaffirming their relationship. On their way home, Aine assures Shuzu that she wants nothing more than to be his wife, regardless of others' opinion. As time passes, Shuzu notices that Aine hasn't been eating her favorite treat in front of him like they used to when they were younger. He understands that he's at risk of developing diabetes due to his age. But Aine doesn't share the same concern. Concerned about her health, he questions Aine, but she brushes it off, saying she'll eat later. In the early hours of the morning, Aine indulges in the sweets alone once again, fearing that tempting Shuzu with the treat might worsen his health now that he has aged again. However, Shuzu, vigilant this time, catches her in the act. Despite her excuses, he understands her concern for him. Seeing her joy while enjoying her favorite treat, he believes it's the best medicine. The couple comes to an understanding and makes a pact to enjoy the treat without guilt. Reflecting on her past, Ain recalls the hardships she faced after her parents passed away and she had to live with her maternal relatives. Despite her father's arrogance, she was despised by her mother's family. Additionally, she struggled to understand their dialect, further isolating her. Finding solace at a Shinto shrine, she met Seru, who offered her food when he heard her stomach growl. Regardless of her background, he believed no one should go hungry. Over time, Shuzu began frequenting Ain's house, causing her discomfort as she tried to prevent misunderstandings about their relationship. To Ain, Shuzu seemed too restless and uneducated, making her doubt if he could truly win her heart. However, in the present day, Ain's heart softened like melted butter when, on an ordinary day, Shuzu had the hard glass dream again after a long time. Shuzu believes that turning the hard glass back could restore his youth, so he eagerly tries his luck. Upon success, the old man reverts to his former youthful appearance, but instead of celebrating, Ain simply asks him to fix his messy hair. Shuzu's return to youth sparks a debate, and Ain questions whether they will grow old and die like everyone else. Shuzu believes the hard glass works like the others, with its sand counting time as it should, eventually running out. Though uncertain about the future, Shuzu thinks their miraculous youth will end when the sand runs out. He reassures Ain not to worry about eternity or outliving their children and grandchildren. As for Ain, she's the only person Shuzu doesn't want to leave behind. He'll be by her side no matter what. The next day, the two boys explore the capital, marveling at the fancy imported cars in Tokyo, which are unlike anything they see in the countryside. As they pass by the apple farm again, Ain approaches them to warn that they are about to spray agrochemicals in the area. She advises them to take a different route if it bothers them. The boys thank her for her kindness, and soon, Shuzu arrives with a red spraying car, making the duo believe that even the countryside has Ferraris. Later, Igarashi Takeda complains to Shuzu that he needed help in the warehouse, but ended up seeing the last person he wanted to see, his grandson, Shouta. Shuzu takes Shouta to see the items collected by his father and grandfather, like folding tables and war fans from the Takeda family. Shuzu mentions that there must be many relics in the warehouse since the Igarashi family owns a lot of land. He asks if Igarashi is really going to throw everything away. Igarashi confirms that he will, fearing it will all turn into junk for the next generation. Shouta notices a black box and asks if it will also be discarded. The old man repeats that he will throw everything away but seems intrigued by the box. Shouta asks why, and Shuzu explains that the box is a Namagotchi, probably part of his grandmother's dowry. As Igarashi touches the box, he is moved by memories of good times with his late wife and asks to be alone for a while. The two then leave the house, respecting his request. At that moment, Shouta calls the Kitamachi Education Secretary to protect his grandfather's cultural object. Hours later, they start moving everything out to be discarded, leaving only a few items, including the black box. Shuzu asks Igarashi what he plans to do with the warehouse. The old man explains that his children have built houses in the city and won't inherit the farm. Additionally, there are no more craftsmen in the area capable of repairing the warehouse, so he plans to have it demolished. During a break, Shuzu asks Shouta if he considers staying in the countryside when he gets older. Although Shouta is unsure, his dream is to move to the capital and become a soccer player. However, he also values the idea of inheriting what his grandfather built. At that moment, they realize Igarashi has been listening. Shouta adds that no matter what he becomes in the future, he knows this land shaped him, and turning his back on his hometown feels like something punishable by the gods. In summary, even if he achieves his soccer dream, he would love to bring life back to his grandfather's farm. Igarashi, moved to tears, decides to cancel the demolition. He hugs Shouta, grateful for his incredible grandson. On the other side of town, Shori visits the university library on her day off to study for exams, as she often does, pretending she is already a college student. At least that was the plan, but she can't find the motivation. Yesterday, while discussing studies with her grandfather, she ended up disrespecting him by saying he couldn't be her teacher since he didn't even finish high school. Suddenly, Shori spots Shuzu in the library and pretends not to see him to avoid being noticed. However, her curiosity about what Shuzu is doing with all those books gets the better of her. She sneaks a peek and sees that they are high school textbooks. This reminds her of her grandmother mentioning that her grandfather wanted to finish high school, but couldn't. Reflecting on how adults always tell young people to study more, Shiori feels a bit irritated by her grandfather's encouragement. Later, Shiori awkwardly thanks her grandfather for helping her get 9th place in the midterm exams, leaving Shuzu confused. At school, Shiori overhears classmates gossiping about a couple in Minaminachi, a handsome guy and a beautiful girl with white hair. When asked if she knows anything, Shiori plays dumb and says goodbye, though her classmates notice she's been coming home early lately. Soon after, Shiori is at Shouta's ice cream shop, where the two have been studying together and sharing secrets. Shiori mentions that her grandfather keeps praising Shouta, making him feel embarrassed. To change the subject, she asks if he has ever thought about getting married like their grandparents. Shouta admires Shuzu and Aina as an exemplary couple and thinks it would be nice to have something like that one day. Similarly, Shiori has started thinking about this recently. Her statement makes the atmosphere awkward, prompting Shouta to excuse himself to go to the bathroom. Mino reflects on how much her grandfather approves of Shouta, constantly praising him, while Shouta tries to convince himself in front of the mirror that he's not on a date. At home, Mino tells her grandparents about the upcoming cultural festival at her school, where her class will run a cafe this year. Aina is excited about visiting her granddaughter's school and suggests taking her husband along, but Shuzu checks the calendar and sees that Saturday is scheduled for spraying the farm, and Sunday they are visiting Takahiro to check on his health, so it seems impossible. Mino asks if her grandmother can go alone, but Aina doesn't want to leave her husband behind and enjoy the event alone. Then, Shuzu takes another look at the calendar and realizes these tasks are scheduled for the following week, so they are actually free for the festival. He invites his wife to accompany him, and Aina happily agrees. The weekend arrives, and on the day of the Kita College Cultural Festival, Shuzu remembers the last time he visited a school was during a typhoon evacuation. Aina is thrilled about the festival, but soon, a group of kids surrounds them trying to sell food, and a girl accidentally spills juice on Aina's blouse. The girl offers to exchange Aina's clothes with something from the fashion club. At the sewing room, the students are fascinated by how well the clothes they lend to Aina fit, while Shuzu waits outside, recalling the various arranged marriage proposals Aina claimed to have had with important people in the past. One day, a man asked what Aina enjoyed most at women's college, and she replied that she loved music, often playing instruments like the koto and piano, something Shuzu would have loved to see. Soon, a student calls Shuzu to come in. And after all the suspense, Aina is wearing a school uniform that enchants her husband in a way he hadn't felt in many, many years. Aina fully embraced her student days in her school uniform, even slipping into her old accent, making Shuzu wonder if she had amnesia. Observing his wife, he noticed that her gaze was just like when they first met. Aina reveled in the moment, feeling youthful again. Shuzu, feeling playful, asked if Miss Sasaki was interested in anyone at the moment. Aina declared that she had no interest in gentlemen. But her performance was so convincing that Shuzu began to think she had been possessed by her younger self. However, Aina couldn't keep up the act any longer and burst into laughter, feeling weird about the imitation. She remembered that Shuzu's question was the same one boys asked her 70 years ago, which she found amusing, instantly sparking her husband's jealous side. Outside, some students were pushing each other to see who would enter the room first, but the white-haired couple spared the young folks the effort by opening the door themselves. Next, it was time for them to see their granddaughter Mino's work. Mino had organized a cafe and was serving her customers with style. A colleague commented that she thought Shuzu was Mino's boyfriend, but neither he nor Aina paid much attention to that. The elderly young man mentioned that their group's cafe was somewhat empty. Shouta explained that Class 3 next door, with the help of their parents, had set up a super cool ramen restaurant that was monopolizing the clientele. Since they had Mino, at least they could attract some boys. But on the other hand, it would be good to attract some girls to this place for a change. Shouta and Mino kept pushing the idea of attracting female customers. Aina encouraged Shuzu to join the fun, and soon, the old ladies were flocking to room 2, leaving the people in room 3 frustrated. They had worked hard to set up a cool ramen restaurant, but now they were losing customers to room 2. Inside room 2, Mino's group was thriving with order after order. An elderly lady left the room, happily mentioning that the waiter had called her madam. The charming waiter, of course, was the young Shuzu, who was drawing in the old ladies. Every time he called them madam, they got more excited. Later, while looking at an old photo from the history of Kinamachi High School, Aina found herself feeling sad that her husband wasn't in the picture. She apologized for her remark, but Shuzu reassured her. He reminded her that his father had prevented him from advancing at Kinamachi High School due to financial constraints and because, as the eldest son, he was expected to work on the family apple farm. Reflecting on his past, Shuzu admitted that there was a time he wished he could have Aina tried to express her emotions, but a group of kids filming the couple spoiled the moment. In the late afternoon, Shouta wanted to invite Mino to dance by the bonfire, but his embarrassment held him back. Her grandmother watching closely made it even harder. Mino felt sad, thinking no one would ask her to dance. Shuzu noticed Shouta's interest in his granddaughter, so he pulled Aina away to give them some privacy. With a boost of courage, Shouta finally asked Mino to dance. While the bonfire blazed, Aina complained because she wanted to see Mino dance, but Shuzu preferred not to intrude and let the kids enjoy themselves freely. Later, Aina dreamed that wearing the school uniform had transported her back to her youth. But now, to submit paperwork to the government, she and Shuzu needed to appear as their true selves. Preparing to revert, Aina accidentally broke a hard glass object with her head. The next morning, Shuzu appeared as his older self, while Aina, now with black hair, was fascinated by modern technology, like a strange board with moving images and a self-lighting stove. She turned around and introduced herself as Aina Sasaki, marveling at the wonders of the modern era. After the initial shock, Shuzu tries to explain to Aina, who has reverted to her younger self, that she is his wife. Her rejuvenated body and memory make her confused by all the modern technology. From her perspective, returning with her maiden name, she starts to believe him because they both wear the same wedding ring. According to Shuzu, she was the one who proposed to him all those years ago. This makes her curious about why she loved him so much to have spent 50 years by his side. So, she asks Shuzu to make her fall in love with him all over again and prove his point. Since living as someone who has traveled back decades is quite complicated, Shuzu suggests they start with a good meal. The electric rice cooker fascinates Aina, who can't believe a machine can make good rice. But when she tastes it, she's instantly convinced. While washing dishes after lunch, Shuzu notices his young wife is intrigued by something. She is curious about seeing a man doing household chores, which was unheard of in her time. Shuzu explains that his father was very controlling at home, setting an example of how he didn't want to be in the future. Since he isn't very good in the kitchen, he left most of that to Aina. However, he always did most of the other chores. Aina finds this impressive, but Shuzu doesn't see it as extraordinary. After all, his wife worked alongside him every day in the orchard, so it was only fair that he didn't just stand around drinking sake while she did everything alone. From the beginning of their relationship, they balanced their tasks, making sure to share the workload. Aina reflects that this balance had been their daily routine for all these decades, with Shuzu taking on household chores without complaint. Later, she becomes intrigued by a roll of film they had in the house. At night, Shuzu explains to the young Aina that all this time travel talk is happening because of a hard glass that appears in both their dreams. When Aina sleeps, she'll understand everything. The next day, Shuzu is young again, leaving his newly young wife amazed. However, she still doesn't remember dreaming about the hard glass and has no memory of Shuzu's youthful appearance, which frustrates him. Despite not recognizing his voice and face, his sad demeanor makes her wish she could share his pain. Shuzu then shows her a photo of their son, his wife, and their daughter. He tells her they are wonderful kids who get along well and take care of their elders. Aina is touched but also worried about the shock her memory loss might cause everyone. Speaking of their children, Shuzu suddenly remembers that Yoshiaki and his family are visiting today, and they hear Mino's voice calling for her grandpa. Aina agrees to pretend to be Mr. Seikyu's wife as long as he helps cover up her memory loss and lack of accent. She figures that even if she doesn't remember her son and granddaughter, she can still make them feel comfortable in her role as a mother and grandmother. Mino's first comment is about her grandmother's black hair, while Yoshiaki asks about his father's health. Shuzu assures him he's doing great, and when Aina repeats a slang term, everyone wonders why she's speaking like that. Shuzu quickly explains that it's because of the cultural festival and all the kids with their slang. He adds that Aina even wore a school uniform that day, which made her feel a bit youthful. Mino thinks it's cool to have a grandma who's all hip and talking like that. Aina notices her granddaughter is kind and gentle, reminding her of herself. She improvises and gives Mino a slightly awkward hug, leaving everyone a little embarrassed but touched. At dinner, Shuzu teaches his young wife how to make rice with curry. She chops carrots and onions with surprising enthusiasm. Aina explains that back home, the servants did all the cooking, so she never learned. She wonders if her husband is laughing at her for not knowing how to cut an onion, but he assures her he'd never laugh at her favorite carrot curry. Humbly, she asks him to teach her how to chop the ingredients, and Shuzu patiently and lovingly shows her. He takes the chance to tease her a bit, and she feels a nostalgic warmth, similar to when she ate the leftovers of her own cooking the previous day. This makes her wonder why her cooking had become so bad, realizing it was always because of Shuzu. At mealtime, Mino notices the potatoes are bigger than usual, but Shuzu pretends it's just her imagination. In reality, Aina was using the peeler like a saw. In a flashback, Yoshiaki joyfully announces he got the highest score on a test, and his mother celebrates his achievement with pride. As an adult, Yoshiaki finds himself in a tough job market that constantly demands more and more. He informs his parents that the company he works for is nearly bankrupt due to the local population decline, which is closing stores because of the lack of customers. Shuzu remembers that his son always has a place in the orchard, but Yoshiaki doesn't want to impose on his parents at this stage of their lives. He believes he should keep pushing himself until he can improve his situation on his own. It's then that Aina takes her son's hand and advises him not to overexert himself, explaining that when those above him take advantage of his hard work, they only profit more while blaming him. She reassures him that it's okay to admit when he's feeling down, as long as he remembers the importance of picking himself back up when he can. She emphasizes that, regardless of age, a child will always be a child, and they will always be there to support him. With that, Yoshiaki opens up, his emotions overflowing as he confides in his parents. After a couple of beers, he expresses his confusion about Aina's behavior, feeling that she's not acting like his mother. Aina gently strokes her son's head, soothing him to sleep, reassuring him that she's always there for him, regardless of any doubts or confusion. The following day, Shuzu brings his wife to the place where she professed her love to him in the past. However, she doesn't recall anything remarkable about the location. In an attempt to jog her memory, they decide to reenact the moment, hoping it might trigger something. They sit together, and Shuzu begins by holding her hand, encouraging her to follow his lead. Both feel awkward as their fingers touch, but Ong interrupts, finding the situation absurd because she claims she would never have acted that way. This leads to tension between them as they return home, their disagreement lingering. Later, Ong visits her elder sister in Hirosaki Hospital. She reminisces about how her sister used to comfort her during thunderstorms, but now, with age, her sister barely responds. Ong reflects on the cruelty of time, realizing her sister only remembers their mother now, despite being physically present. Throughout the visit, Ong notices Shuzu's silent but supportive presence, which gives her comfort. She leans into him, feeling reassured. Meanwhile, Mrs. Tsuru, her sister, sits by the piano, once a talented pianist. Ong decides to play for her, recalling how they used to share music together, despite her sister's current state of silence. At this moment, Tsuru may not remember anything about her homeland where she spent most of her life or even age, but the music certainly brings a sparkle back to the old lady's eyes. She presses one of the keys with her thumb, surprising her sister, and then starts playing alongside her like in the old days, singing a song about still dreaming of those days even today. In the end, Saru says she doesn't know who the girl next to her is, but she plays very well. Upon hearing that while the music played on the piano, and cried at the opportunity to finally see her sister at least one more time. Weeks later, In's memory still hadn't returned, and now it was the first time she was alone because her husband was at the association meeting. Even today, she sees no sign of having fallen in love with him, and leaving a girl without memory alone in a strange house certainly isn't a positive point for him. Besides, the curry he made isn't all that great, and he doesn't realize that whenever he's not around, she gets anxious about everything. Ian acknowledges that she shouldn't be anxious as she's been there long enough to know how to manage without needing help, but still, for some reason, she can't calm down. Perhaps only his presence by her side would make things calmer, and so she wishes he would come back soon. Out of nowhere, the memory of Shizuo's vow never to abandon Ian resurfaces as the shattered heart glass rebuilds itself. At 16, Ian playfully confessed to her future husband, but it soon became serious when he began visiting the shrine daily for her. Despite objections from her relatives, who didn't approve of Shuzu's family, Ian and Shuzu were separated for a long time. One rainy day, Shuzu appeared at her house, bruised from a fight with his father, and pleaded for them to be together. When Ian fell seriously ill later, Shuzu cared for her and covered her medical expenses. Although Anne considers their relationship to be cursed, Shuzo remains unfazed by the misfortunes, promising to love her forever. When Shuzo returns home after the meeting, Anne rushes to greet him, her hair turning white in the process, regretting her earlier words and realizing their intertwined destiny. The following day, Anne apologizes for her outburst and wonders how Shuzo has remained patient through it all. He reassures her that both the present and past Anne are equally important to him, and he gently reminds her that their hands are resting together, symbolizing their shared journey. With each passing day, the Seru couple eagerly plans their long-awaited honeymoon. They hope to stop in Tokyo on their way to Atami, or perhaps visit Akemi to play cards while sipping sake. However, to do this, they need to catch the train during the Aomori station shift. Shada dampens their excitement by warning that the overnight train rarely runs anymore, as most people now use the bullet train, which only takes 3 hours to reach Atami. Aina is astonished because the journey used to take 8 hours on the old train, and she can't believe how much faster it is now. Shada then asks Mino if it's really okay to help her grandparents as she requested. Shada points out that the fact Mino joined the Tokyo football team already helps a lot, but the young man worries the elderly couple might get into trouble on their own. Speaking of which, Shibu insists he'll enter Tokyo with a watermelon on his head, as tradition dictates. Shouda asks if Mino's grandparents know anyone in the Kanto area, and the grandfather explains that their daughter lives there with her husband, although they are probably busy with work. He thinks it would be great to have someone guide them in Tokyo. At that moment, everyone looks at young Shouda, who realizes there's no way out of this request, while Mino says she'll go too if he does. Aina expresses her joy at spending the honeymoon with her dear grandchildren, but Shouda loses his temper and shouts for everyone to calm down because he's not their grandson or anything like that. Cleverly, Shuzu argues that this would be an excellent chance for Shouda to meet Mino in the capital. Nevertheless, Shouda needs his grandfather's permission, so he takes the request to the elder. Outraged, Igarashi refuses the proposal without a second thought, filled with hatred in his heart. Because of this, Mino uses her charm and tells the old man that Shouda is in the same class as her and that it would be a great help if the boy accompanied her grandparents on this trip, with her also going along. With that said, the old man celebrates wildly, thinking his grandson has brought home a bride. The young ones try to explain that they're just friends, but Igarashi doesn't want to hear the truth. Nevertheless, the gentleman decides in favor of his grandson's trip. To prepare for this moment, Aina already gets her share of caramelized sweet potatoes from Mrs. Katcha. Katcha comments on how long it's been since they last saw each other, and Anne agrees, noting how empty the place feels. Katcha responds that times have changed and even her shop probably won't last much longer. But not wanting to dwell on heavy topics, she wishes her friend a safe return. Before leaving, Anne expresses her fear of being forgotten by time and vows to fight against it. Shortly after, another customer asks for 100 grams of caramelized sweet potato, and soon several other customers appear, making the shop owner wonder about the sudden hustle and bustle. A customer explains that he saw a girl standing outside the market and got curious. Katcha soon notices that Aina is there with all her beauty, eating sweet potatoes and drawing in passers-by like a living advertisement. 60 years ago, at Aomori Station, Shuzu bid farewell to a friend who was leaving for Tokyo to try to make a living in the big city. Shuzu always said that the capital wouldn't be a good place for him, but secretly he wished for a chance in a place like that. Now, 60 years later, the gentleman was so lost in this memory that Aina had to bring his attention back to the present and entering the station. Before they all board the train, Yashiki wishes the boys a great trip but warns Shouda that if anything happens to his daughter, there will be consequences for him. Before boarding, Aina asks her husband if he has ever been to Tokyo, and he replies that he has never left the prefecture since he was born. He blames himself for her health worsening, but she would never accept that blame. The younger and older versions of his wife confuse him and invite him to leave. Despite the romantic setting, they accidentally board a train to Hokkaido, but the grandchildren manage to get the elders off in time. At the beginning of the journey, Aina is startled by the speed and asks how fast the train is going. Shouda replies that it's 186 miles per hour. She worries about zooming past Mount Fuji and not being able to see it, but Shouda explains that they should be on another line for that. Mito asks why the grandparents are in their elderly form, and they explain that they are using the silver discount and it would probably cause trouble if they looked young. The train announces that the next stop is Sendai Station. As tradition dictates, the grandparents take a nap and tell their grandchildren not to wake them up even if the train derails. Eventually, they arrive in Tokyo, and Shuzu and Aina transform back into their younger selves to fully enjoy the moment. Their first stop is in Musashi, where Akemi lives, and Shouda will visit his maternal grandmother. Unfortunately, Akemi is sick when her mother arrives. Despite managing to get time off, she has to spend the entire visit feeling feverish. Akemi recalls how, during times like this, her mother used to make porridge for her, always taking such good care of her. Even when she felt unwell as a child, she thought she was in paradise. As she remembers, she feels a hand on her forehead checking her temperature and thinks she's hallucinating when she sees Aina looking as young as she did when Akemi was a child. It takes an hour to explain everything, but eventually, Akemi understands. The visitors ask if she wants to rest a bit, but the excitement of the visit even wakes her up. The Seru couple comments on how Tokyo feels like a different world, so different from the rest of Japan. During a stop in Asakusa, some schoolgirls even ask to take a photo with them. They ask about Akemi's family, and Mino explains that her aunt and uncle have a large family, with grown children who have left home and started their own families. Speaking of the kids, Kasuke, the great-grandson, is greeted by his great-grandfather with a big surprise. The boy initially thinks Shuzu is his dad because Shuzu looks incredibly similar to Shinji. Soon, the boy is having fun with the resemblance. The next day, after explaining everything to Akemi's family, Mino and Shouda head to the Shinjuku area. Meanwhile, the honeymoon couple goes to Sugamo Shopping Street and is amazed by the variety of products, including Buddhist utensils and Chinese medicine items. First, Shizu decides to stop by a specialized haramaki store while his wife takes a stroll. The shopkeeper assumes Shizu is looking for something for his grandfather, but he's actually shopping for himself. Aina thought she was just going to browse the market, but ends up with bags full of purchases. When she returns to the haramaki store, she sees her husband attracting a crowd of elderly ladies who think he's a handsome gentleman. Shizu takes a haramaki to wear under his clothes, as he always does. Later, Aina is surprised to find out that her husband has reserved 2 seats at a restaurant because he wants her to try a parfait there. Seeing the delightful dessert on the table, Aina asks how much it costs, but her husband tells her not to worry about it during this special moment. Despite feeling like she'll be punished by the heavens for eating something so luxurious, she eats just 1 strawberry to satisfy her craving. However, the expression on her face after the first spoonful makes it clear that she's going to devour that parfait without hesitation. Afterward, they go to a game center to take some photos for keepsake, but the couple ends up looking like they went to get their ID cards. Because of this, Mino decides to teach the grandparents how it's done and pulls them in to show them how to take fun photos with various poses and writing. Shizu and Ain, understanding the process better, decide to try again. This time, they loosen up and take a fun photo, drawing on the images like the young people do. When they show the result to others, everyone can hardly believe how silly and tacky it looks. Finally, the 4 of them take a photo together. Upon returning to Onakimi's house, Shizu promises to give some spinning tops to his great-grandson, who is thrilled to receive the gift but becomes furious when he sees what's inside the package. Shunzuk, Akimi's youngest son, explains to his grandfather that he misunderstood. Keisuke wanted a spinning top with a blade and ball bearing to defeat his opponent's spinning top. Shizu looks at those new spinning tops and believes it would be a fair battle against his old ones, so he challenges his great-grandson to a match. If the little one wins, Shizu will give him a new toy. With the duel confirmed, they prepare the track, and Shunzuk warns Shizu that the old spinning tops are no match for the new ones. Nevertheless, a challenge has been made, so the battle begins. As soon as Keisuke launches his B-blade, Shizu uses every fiber of his muscles to spin his hurricane-shaped top, which obliterates the boy's top, leaving Keisuke in tears over his humiliating defeat. To make up for it, the old man buys a present for his great-grandson anyway. As night falls, the 2 are exhausted and take a nap. In the kitchen, Take-Me recalls an old memory and confides in her mother that she was afraid her mother would feel abandoned after she got married and left home. Deep down, Take-Me blames herself for always worrying about Ain's health, but never doing anything to improve it. She hugs her mother tightly, just like she used to when she was a child. Ain reassures her that just knowing Take-Me as well is enough, even with the distance between them. Meanwhile, in Manaminachi, Shiori looks for her grandparents but remembers they are traveling. She recalls they keep a key hidden in a stone in the backyard, so she manages to get into the house. Inside, she is flooded with memories of her grandparents. She went there to study peacefully since she doesn't feel comfortable doing it at home. However, she begins to fear her grandparents leaving and her not being able to do anything about it. She reflects that she will grow up in a few years, have her own family, and not depend on anyone. When that happens, neither of her grandparents will be there anymore. Therefore, Shiori deeply wishes for Shizu and Ain to return soon. In the midst of it all, they both experience a strange jolt of lightning. Soon after, a representative from Ganu Productions approaches them, reminding them of Shayada's advice to be cautious of certain individuals they might attract. They resolve to reject whoever this person is, without hesitation. Ain attempts to scare the man off without hearing him out, while Shiju loses his temper and angrily dismisses him. The man praises Shiju's tall stature and handsome features, suggesting that he could easily grace the cover of a magazine. This time, it's Ain who confronts the man, arguing that while her husband is indeed good-looking, it's inappropriate to ask him to flaunt himself in front of the whole country, especially in her presence. Upon encountering Shada again, they recount how they managed to successfully shoo the man away by revealing their true ages, claiming they're actually in their 82nds. Accepting defeat, the man leaves quietly. Finally, the family reaches Atami, and both Shaju and Ain are overwhelmed with tears, realizing they've fulfilled such an old dream. Thanks for watching my recap. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us in reaching our goal of 20,000 subscribers. Your support means a lot to us.